Hi, y'all. Welcome to You Make Me Sick TV. Woo-hoo. Hope everybody's having a good day, no matter what's going on in this messed up country of ours. Yeah. So today I have set aside so far people that have been listed as deceased in relation to the Epstein files. And I'm also going to add some people that are still listed as alive. And I want you to be also aware that there's many people on the list, the official list, which I have never seen, but on lists that I have seen, that are also questionable. They don't know if they are alive or not. Okay, so before we get into people being deceased that have been involved or victims with Jeffrey Epstein, I want to update y'all on something that was going on over this weekend. Remember yesterday I reported that our Donnie was over there in Europe, and he said he didn't want to talk about the Epstein files, but he definitely never shut up about it. And the way he talked about it was just so disgusting. He makes me sick. Sorry, he makes me more than sick. There's so much to talk about while he was answering questions about his reactions. But one of the reactions that he said, that's the update on today, is he said the reason why Epstein's relationship with him ended was because now, as of when he said this over the weekend, that Epstein was taking help from Mar-a-Lago and, taking him to his house to have at his house. And when he said that, I thought, oh, this is a crack in the door of light that he's letting in for us now. This is going to be the new story of how he's linked to having groomed people and allowing Jeffrey Epstein to take people from his house in Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, then to Epstein's house, which was about a mile away. So I said, that's it. That's his in, and now he's in. So today I was getting ready to go over this list. And then I saw on the Independent, they're reporting that Trump says Epstein stole underage victim Virginia Giuffre from his Mar-a-Lago spa, leading to the feud. So now he's gone into more detail to explain that victim's explanation of how she met Jeffrey Epstein was she was the towel girl at Donald Trump's house in Palm Beach. And there's an article on it that basically just says what I told you today and yesterday. So I'm not going to get into it, but he makes me sick. Okay, so as far as deaths that have been linked to people or victims that know Jeffrey Epstein was none other than Jeffrey Epstein himself. He died by suicide in prison in August 2019 while awaiting trial on federal sex trafficking charges. That's a question that they haven't been able to say if he really died of suicide or not, but it was reported that he did. There was also reports that saying the way his neck was broken 3 different places is not realistic of him, leaning forward from the bed in his cell in prison. And also, there's just under 3 minutes missing of the tape of that night as it was happening. Wow, what a coincidence, don't y'all think? Okay, so he obviously is dead. He, just some FYIs I'm going to stick in here, is he was arrested in Florida in 2008. He owned multiple very expensive homes, not only across our country, but also overseas. New York City, Palm Beach, very exclusive island area that you had to take a bridge to get to that part of Florida. California, and eventually he bought an island in the Virgin Islands and 2 islands in the Virgin Islands, which was very secluded. Obviously, you had to fly there with him or without him. So as of last week, this is what prompted me to it. There was a death in relation to this case, and that was of Roy Black. And his death was reported last Monday or Tuesday. And he was Epstein's former defense in Miami in 2008. And when Epstein was arrested in 2008, he was let off extremely easily. And this man, his attorney, was one of the reasons why he avoided federal charges. And he died last week. Yes, he was 80, but they haven't come out and said exactly what he's died of. Apparently, he was still going to the office every day and working, etc., etc. So just a reminder, last Monday, when he died, was around the same time us public people started to know that Ghislaine and was going to start to be seen or wanted to be seen by the White House, and then his death comes up. So I just thought that was not a coincidence. Yeah. So Alan Dershowitz was also Epstein's attorney, and also, so he's still alive. Obviously, you see his disgusting picture all over the place, as well as Alex Acosta's picture all over the place. Still, he's alive. He was also a big pawn in the Southern Florida district. He shut down the case with Roy Black, and he was the U.S. Alex Acosta, just so we don't get confused and I don't get confused and ahead of myself. He was the U.S. Attorney of Florida at the time, the Southern District of Florida, and he shut down the case with a plea deal that allowed the child trafficking ringleader Epstein to plead guilty to a single state charge of solicitation in exchange for a federal non-prosecution agreement. After Epstein's arrest in 2019 on sex trafficking charges, so eventually he was charged with sex trafficking 11 years later. So much damage was done to these girls by then, all because of this cover-up that began back then and before then. And he ended up resigning. Can't believe somebody actually resigned. He must have got faced with a lot of disagreements. Well, he's back in the picture now, so he's back in. I don't know what else to say after that. Another person who is still alive that was well involved is Les Wexner. I'm sure you've seen his mug. Ugh, he makes me sick. He and Miss Maxwell and Epstein, all those three were very well known and connected. Lexter has a big, huge house in Ohio with lots of acreage and a house in back of it. He's extremely wealthy. Epstein stated in one of his statements that he could actually control Les, who eventually gave Epstein the power of attorney to his fortune while he was still alive. So I guess that was true. He could control him. We don't know how or why. And also, one of Epstein's victims, Maria Farmer, she was told to go live in the house in back of his mansion on his property in Ohio. So she took all her artist stuff because she was an inspiring artist. She painted really well, and she just stayed in that house, and she was hired, like back in the Renaissance days when people would hire painters to come to their house and paint beautiful things in their houses. So she was hired to come stay in this house and paint pictures of girls that were going through puberty or adolescence, I think they called it, with not much clothes on. And she was also told to use her sisters. She had 2 sisters. They asked her how many siblings she had, and she had pictures of her siblings that she was to paint as so like these pictures that they ended up taking from her. And apparently in her testimony, one night Ghislaine and Epstein came to visit her, and that night and the next day they both that night they physically touched her sexually and all this other stuff, and she managed to get away, and they acted like nothing happened, and then they left in the morning and they took the pictures of her younger sisters with them, and she was very upset about that. Just want to make a point about that. Okay, someone else that is also dead is Trump's first wife, Ivana, not to be confused with his daughter, Ivanka. So Ivana died in 2022. She died allegedly falling down the stairs. And also, there was a testimony from Marie Farmer last week, and she stated that Ivana was in the car a lot with her and Epstein Maxwell. Actually, many times they would all drive around together looking for girls after schools let out. Girls in uniforms, and Ghislaine would get out of the car quickly if she saw somebody she wanted to talk to, like in middle school or high school. She'd go give them their phone numbers, jump back in the car, and Ivana was in the car all these times. And that was about the time Ivana was doing QVC, selling her own jewelry like Donald's now third wife does also, but online. Just thought I'd throw that in. John Casablancas is also deceased. He was the model owner of Casablancas, which we also had, I guess it was a satellite of them over here in our city of Raleigh, that I actually considered taking my daughter to at the time, because when she was younger, I would drive her up to New York to have her try out for like DKNY ads and Gap ads and stuff like that. And so that disturbed me when I heard of all his involving with Donald Trump, and that they both owned modeling companies, and they both, were pervs with the girls and got access to young girls and underage girls as well. And then also just want to throw in there for John Casablancas's character, he left his first wife to sexually abuse a 15-year-old, and then he left his second wife to do the same with a 17-year-old. Okay, so he's deceased. Virginia Giuffre, deceased. You probably know her very well. She was the most spoken out victim. She lived in Australia trying to get away from these people, Epstein Maxwell and Epstein. Their grips and spider webs went far. They went into Europe. They would threaten her life all the time when she would try to get out of things, and she found an opportunity to get out, and she ended up getting married and relocating to Australia, where she died of suicide this year in April. Not sure what her parents have said about that, but she was very much one of the most outspoken girls because she accused Epstein, and she also accused Prince Andrew, which you may have seen the picture of her with him when she was very young, and his arm is like around her waist down here. So, but it's so funny and not funny. It's sad to see him deny anything. He doesn't know how that picture exists. He never met her, Virginia. He never met anybody. He just keeps on saying that. And then, of course, royalty will come out and say, the same thing. This so-and-so about Prince Andrew is not true. And so it is not true. And then she died of suicide at the beginning of this year. These people are disgusting. Jean Luke Brunel, she was a close associate of Epstein and found dead by suicide in a prison in February 2022, awaiting trial on charges of rape and sexual harassment of minors. I don't know if that was a male or a female. I'm sorry, I'm losing track here. There's so many people that I've been researching. But again, suicide seems to be how these people mostly die. It's really interesting. And the way Epstein built up his trafficking, prostitution ring for all these wealthy, powerful men is by word of mouth. If one of the girls were lured to his house for a $200 massage, and then he would roll over and want sex. If they didn't feel comfortable, then he would say whoever they sent to the house, they would still receive $200 along with any friends of theirs that they knew from school, the $200. A lot of these girls felt cornered in his mansion because a lot of times they were the only ones there. In Palm Beach, it's an island that can only get access via bridge, and obviously the Virgin Islands, it was an island that he had. So some of the girls went through with it and then felt extremely guilty and started doing drugs. Some of them did it for years in hopes that his lie of making their dreams come true would really come into fruition as well through making money and through his connections. Also, Stephen Hoffenberg, deceased. He knew him for over 30 years. He met him in the 80s, and he is described as Epstein's mentor, but both of them together were like fraudulent Ponzi schemers, and that doesn't even put the grips over all the illegal schemes they put on to everybody financially. And he was found dead in his apartment in August 2022 at the age of 77. And the cause of his death is pending, waiting for toxicology results, although an autopsy showed no signs of trauma and no indications of struggle or forced entry to his apartment. Caroline Adriano, victim, deceased, 14 years old, when she first met Jeffrey Epstein. Her mom called the police when she got back home from his massage issue. That's how him and Ghislaine would get the girls to the house, saying that they could be his massage therapist for, 40 minutes or an hour and get the $200, quick money for these really young girls. And then once they got in there, they would manipulate them because a lot of these girls came from circumstances where one of their parents just died, where they were really poor. One saw like her stepmother and father beat up her brother right in front of her. I mean, if they knew they were sexually abused before, they knew they were compromised and they would most likely be sexually abused again with them and keep quiet. This was the way they kept them in, and this pyramid scheme growing. You tell your friend, you tell your friend. You could come back and you can tell your friend. You both get paid. So she died in 2023 of an accidental overdose. There was another young girl, Lee Sky Patrick, who met Jeffrey Epstein at 16 years old. She also overdosed in 2017 at the age of 29. And her sister attributes her struggles with addiction to her experience with Epstein. Obviously, she tried to block it out all the time. There was a man named Alfredo Rodriguez. He served as Jeffrey Epstein's house manager or butler at his Palm Beach mansion, deceased. An investigator called him and called other employees after, I think it was Lee Sky Patrick's mom. No, it was Caroline Adriano's mom that called after her first visit to Epstein's mansion. Her daughter came back and told her, and she called the police, and the police opened up an investigation. And I don't know if it was during that investigation or more, because his investigations went on for years with the local police and with the FBI. So Rodriguez, who served as the manager, now deceased, investigators were calling him and other employees trying to see if they could get any information from them about Jeffrey Epstein. Apparently, Rodriguez stole a copy of the Epstein's Black Book, which they called it at the time. It contained names and numbers of the individuals connected to Epstein's alleged sex trafficking ring, and he tried to sell it in 2009 after Epstein was doing his 13 months in jail time. The Black Book included names of underage girls who visited Epstein's residences and others connected to the network. Rodriguez was sentenced to 18 months in prison in 2012 for obstruction of justice stemming from his attempt to sell the Black Book after initially denying its existence to the investigators. He claimed in the court the book was his insurance against Epstein, who he feared wanted him to disappear. And that's common to hear from all the victims as well. Him and Ghislaine had no problem threatening their lives of their loved ones, no matter what. They were just monsters. They had no sense of humanity at all. Marvin Minsky died in 2016. He was a known associate of Epstein. He was one of the first AI pioneers, apparently, and Epstein worked with him in his sex trafficking network. He actually helped him with a lot of techie stuff at the time, and The deposition also names Prince Andrew of Britain and former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, among others. The accusation against Minsky was made by Virginia Giuffre, who was deposed in May 2016 as part of a broader defamation suit between her and an Epstein associate, Epstein Maxwell. In the deposition, Virginia Giuffre said she was directed to have sex with Minsky, this Marvin Minsky, who died in 2016 when he visited Epstein's compound in the U.S. Virgin Islands. I believe he would visit the compound to help, like I said, set up all the tech stuff that needed on the island, since if it was off land, and Epstein liked his privacy. John Conley, an investigative journalist, deceased, pursued Epstein's ties and alleged cover-ups, and he died in 2021. Wendy Lee, a journalist, a novelist. She was called an eternally optimistic person. She fell to her death from her flat. And she was also known to have had an affair with Robert Maxwell, who was Ghislaine's father, a British elite fraud con man also, who also fell to his death or was pushed off his yacht by the Canary Islands. And she wrote about his death after he died. And then she was found dead. Detective Joe Recarey, he's also listed as deceased. He was a decorated former Palm Beach detective who led the Epstein investigation. He died at 50 in 2018. He was highly loved also, and very passionate on this case. And he died in 2018. So those are the people who are died, and those are also some of the people who are alive that are all in or related to the United States administration White House right now in 2025. So either you're deceased or you're promoted to White House. Important detail. What a huge cover-up this is. I can't imagine what this is all about. There's so many victims. As I always say, there's Shauna Rivera. There's, she was 14. There's Haley Robson. She was 16. She was also raped by someone else a year before she met Epstein, and her and Ghislaine and Epstein knew this, and that's why they recruited her. There was a 16-year-old named Stephanie who was reported that asked to give a massage. Michelle Licata, she kept a log. Courtney Wild, 14, when she was brought to Epstein. Alicia Arden reported him for sexual battery as Epstein pretended to be a talent scout for Victoria's Secrets out in California one day, once he was linked to Les Wexner because he owned Victoria's Secrets and Epstein was in charge of his bank account at the time. the list goes on, and a lot of those girls are testifying this week and last week. So keep your eyes open. And apparently that's not enough for our White House, and I could see why, because the more you look into this, the more you could see everybody's in this, covering it up. And I guess other people are found that they're covering up now too, that are new to the scene, and you're kind of not seeing them at the White House this week, even though they're supposed to be working there every day. They're not doing their Fox News appearances. So that's about it for today. I'm going to wrap it up. It's 5 o'clock. Wow, I have to cook dinner. And I will update you on some more stuff very soon. I'll be up tonight researching and digging, and have a great evening. Enjoy your loved ones and stay safe. Keep everyone safe, but keep resisting this government. I don't know what to call it. This corrupt cabinet and administration that we have now. So, peace to you all. I love you all. I can feel the love coming back in. Let's all stay together and get through this together.